very excited for this next panel as well. Just a whole lot of superstars coming up. This one's titled Drilling for Data, Powering DeFi Applications. If data is the new oil, who are the prospectors? Data and data security are key to making the Chainlink Network operate. This one's going to be hosted by our very own Patrick Collins, and a lot of interesting stuff to get into. So Patrick, please take it away.
Hello, how's everybody doing? We are talking about data, and if it's the new oil, who are the prospectors? We have a stellar panel here, and I'm really excited to be on this panel because I think this could be a really fun conversation. Data and how it works and who uses it, and the security of data is critically important to DeFi, to blockchain, and to all applications that run the web in general. So I would like to introduce our panel here. So first we have Ambre, the CEO of Kaiko. We have Max with us as well. He's BD and data sales at CryptoCompare. We have Shawn, who is having a couple technical difficulties. He's the CEO of AmberData. And then we have Dawn, who's a professor in computer science at UC Berkeley, and also the founder and CEO of Oasis Labs. How's everybody doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to jump right into it, I know there's a lot of affiliation here with data providers and crypto APIs. And yeah, so just to jump right into it, if data is the new oil, who are the prospectors? Ambre, if you could actually start it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. And data is the new oil. Who are the prospectors? I think it's interesting because it's really one of those pieces of crypto that actually touches pretty much any market participant. Everyone needs to have by means of introduction, Kaiko, we're on market data, meaning we provide price data for 35,000 plus crypto assets, including spot, futures, options, etc. So who needs to access this data? Pretty much anyone, going from the retail dude who's like updating his mobile app to know what's his portfolio worth, generally doing that 25 times a day, even sometimes in the middle of the night, all the way to very sophisticated, market participants, people that are investors, market makers, custodians, and anyone needs to have data, at least for valuation purposes, if not for more in-depth research, etc. So it's really something that is important for everyone. And for me, it's one of the founding blocks of any growing industry. You need to have a reliable market data information. If you don't, you're in the dark. And if you're in the dark, you don't want to get into that industry.
Shawn, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, sure. So Shawn Douglas, CEO and co-founder at AmberData. So we are a digital assets data provider. We provide a comprehensive on-chain data plus market data. And as Ambre said, in any new market, you need to have a comprehensive data infrastructure to understand price discovery, to have transparency. Transparency enables trust. The whole idea behind many of these digital assets is transparency and mechanisms that enable you to actually create value and drive network effects. And you have to have data to understand what is happening. So I very much agree with what Ambre said.
Max,
Go
ahead, Dawn.
Okay, okay. So no worries. Right, so at Oasis Labs, we actually built the next generation blockchain platform, and with the greater scalability and privacy protection. So we're actually the first privacy-enabled blockchain platform. And by combining blockchain and the distributed ledger and the secure computing environment together, so basically by combining the ledger capability and privacy protection, we actually enable what we call data tokenization. So we so besides other aspects, for example, we can enable better like private DeFi and so on. But in particular related to this discussion is that we actually create a new capability that can help people to tokenize their data as assets. And essentially we help users maintain control of their rights to data, maintain control of their data, and also at the same time to enable data to be utilized in a privacy preserving way. And also users can get paid for it, users can get various benefits from it. And one example you asked, who are the data prospectors? So one example is in a genomic use case, genomic data use case. So in this case, of course, everybody's genomic data is really sensitive. But being able to use but the genomic data is also very valuable. So, for example, pharmaceutical companies, they often buy this data. I don't know what the people heard, like Ancestry, that's a direct-to-consumer genomic company that they recently was sold for like billions and billions of dollars, and part of it is their assets for users' data. So with our platform, we, as one concrete use case, we enable users to essentially create this data asset, for example, for your genomic data, and then we can help protect your genomic data, and at the same time, for example, users, if they want to use some genomic company's data analysis, they can give consent to that genomic company, and then by using our platform, we can ensure that their data is being protected, when the data is in use, it's being computed over. So for example, the genomic company can now just copy over the user's data, and so this way users can actually still maintain control of their data.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's actually brings up a good point in how, it's not just price data. It's not just this DeFi data that's going to be super important. There's so much data, and we need it to power so many different things. But Max, if you want to comment on that original topic as well.
Yeah, so just a quick intro to me. Max, I look after BD and sales at CryptoCompare. So when it comes to who's prospecting for data, to Ambre's point, data is underpinning pretty much every decision we make now, or large majorities of it, since we've large majorities of our business operations are online, and we have to use data to make to fulfill these operations. So the kind of people that we're speaking to a lot of the time that are looking for the data, obviously we're pulling it, we're prospecting it, but who needs it? So there's regulators, trading venues, a lot of tax and accounting solutions, and more recently a lot more machine learning, big data, AI sort of solutions that need massive amounts of data to make informed decisions. So these are the sort of archetypes that are looking for data. We do provide two different data services, one via all-inclusive market data API, much like Kaiko and AmberData. We have market data, blockchain data, social sentiment data. And then also we do have an industry business where a little bit more of the prospectors that are looking for that data are the institutional markets or regulated products. So yeah, so we span all the way from the retailer through to institutional clients and people that are looking for this type of data.
So the answer here is almost like from hearing all you talk, it's almost like, hey, like we're the prospectors, we're here, and there's going to be more and more. And I think, Don, again, we have this diverse group of data providers as well. We have market data, which is super important to DeFi, and I'm sure we'll get more into that soon. But also, what did she say? Genomic data? Is that what it was?
So right, and genomic data is one example, but actually another example that's really close to DeFi is, for example, users' credits related information.
Right. Yeah.
Your past credit history, your purchase history, your payment, your paycheck history, and so on. So all these, they can be super useful for DeFi applications. And there's also another area where Oasis Network can help with this secure computing aspect. We can provide privacy protection and also at the same time to be able to actually enable applications to use this type of data.
Right. So we have this diverse group of data, and there's so much you can do with it. Is there is it more important for the data provider to say, hey, we're giving this data, here's why we're drilling for it, here's why we're curating this data, and kind of give the developers reasons for using this data? Or is it more on the developers and people building these products to say, hey, we want this data, and the data providers or the data prospectors to go out and find it?
You know how like I like to define our business in terms of data providers. I like to say that we're the plumbers. We basically make data accessible in a way that the data is there, right? It's all scattered all over the world, all over exchanges in different formats, different ways to access it, different ways to retrieve it, etc. And I like to say that, we're solely giving market participants with a way to access this information in a very neat, reliable, actionable fashion. And I'm not just talking, in our case, indeed, it's market data. But one of the things that was very thematic around blockchain initially was also about giving power to individual around what they want to do with their own data. So the whole thing that Don is talking about data privacy is really about enabling control of your own personal data and potentially using the blockchain to protect, unprotect, monetize, and decide who should be permissioned or not to access your data. There's so many things you could do on the personal data side that's not really my edge. But I like to talk about data providers in the space really as enablers, where the data is there. As of now, exchanges haven't limited or gated any of their market data, contrarily to the more traditional financial exchanges. However, it's more of a technical challenge and kind of a pain in the neck for people to access it in a way that is really easy. So when we, be it for traders, market makers, whoever, and now making it available for developers wanting to build smart contracts, it's really about just making the data available. And I think that's a big building fundamental block of the crypto industry.
I think to add to Ambre's point there is that I think all of us, whether it be Kaiko or CryptoCompare or AmberData, we're spending millions of dollars in infrastructure to invest to make easily accessible what would take people years to provide that connectivity into these exchanges across the globe in these various different protocols and blockchains, so that people can easily make data-driven decisions, understand what happened historically, build new businesses without having to make the investment in infrastructure that they can consume from somebody who that's our specialty, right? So I think that as prospectors of this data, we're unlocking a global platform and environment for people to be able to build new businesses on and accelerate their time to market, and just making it so the industry can flourish, because at the end of the day, this entire space should be data-driven, and to be able to build businesses and to not take unnecessary risks, you have to have visibility to what's happening in the markets, what's happening on chain, especially in the DeFi space where you have massive leverage, you have rebasing, you have prices going from $0 to $13,000 in a day. So data is super, super mission critical.
And just to add, I'll have to, I'm really sorry, I'll have to run off in a couple of minutes, but just to add on that, in my previous life before crypto, I was an equity derivative structurer, and like the importance of, and so basically you write financial contracts, which is a mathematical formula based on the price of an underlying at a specific time. And I really believe in the way that blockchain and smart contracts can completely transform the way we run financial instruments in the capital markets industry. But price is a key component of that. If you don't have the right reliable price on which you're going to base your contract, be it a smart contract, a lending contract, or staking, anything, you need a reliable price. And this is so fundamental. And it's not a luxury to have access to really good data. And sometimes people think that because it's out there, you shouldn't really be paying for it. But actually, to Shawn's point, what we're doing is just enabling a client to access a level of sophistication when it comes to data that is just not possible if you want to build versus buy, just because it's an economy of scale question.
So, and yeah, that's a good point. And so one thing I wanted to add is, in this discussion, we call it data is a new oil, but actually you can say data is a new crude oil. So oftentimes, right, so this data is raw data, has not been processed. It's just like you can't just take crude oil and directly pump it into your car, anything. So you actually need the refinery, you need the processing, and that's a lot of value add, and that really enables the data, the oil can then actually be used. So, yeah. Right, so that's why, right, so with data very much, like we need this data processing, data refineries, and oftentimes, so in network setting, for example, in the Oasis network setting, ideally what we would like to see is that the different entities actually, they can provide these type of different types of capabilities, including different types of data cleaning, different types of data extraction, processing, and so on. And then as they provide value, all these different entities automatically also get paid, get shares the revenue or the value that actually in the end gets created from data use. And a blockchain platform actually can enable you to do that as well. And you can really seamlessly connect all these different components and different pieces. And at Berkeley, we also have done research in how to distribute value of data. And also in this case, we can extend to distribute value to the data processors and data refineries and so on. And I think that could help create a more seamless process and ecosystem as well.
I'm running off.
Bye, Ambre.
Ambre, thank you so much for joining us.
If I could just touch on that, Patrick, quickly. So the infrastructure of our companies, market data companies, is pretty much your IP at the end of the day. In terms of your reliability, your uptime, your accuracy. At peak times, we're doing like 50,000 trades a second, and you can't just whip that up and build that in a matter of weeks or months. We were founded in 2014. It takes a long time to build the solutions to be able to give this raw data out so people can build amazing businesses with it. What I'm excited to see is how data is going to be used in the next 10 years. How many different archetypes or industry verticals are going to be built purely by raw data and monetizing it. So there's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. But at the end of the day, without the correct market infrastructure, which is still very early doors compared to traditional finance, now the data is going to be very reliable. So that's what we focus on, and I'm sure Amber and Kaiko do the same.
Yeah, and you each touched on a lot of really important pieces. Ambre said, the data is already there. Why should we be paying for it? And then Don said, well, it's kind of like crude oil, and the analogy definitely falls as well. The crude oil is already there. Why would you pay for that? Well, because you're not going to go out there and drill a hole to get the crude oil. It's in the same way for data. You're not going to go out there and clean the data and make sure it's really good. So I actually wanted to ask a little bit about that too, kind of the challenges that you guys are facing to get this really reliable data, and why it's so important that you clean it really well, and especially in the blockchain space, why it's important to clean this data and make it really, really strong and reliable.
Can I take that?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the blockchain data, you don't necessarily need to clean it. It's at the end of the day, you have to make it easy to understand, maybe. But the market data needs a lot of cleaning, right? So every single different exchange has got a different way that they disseminate their data, either in or out of the API. So you need to build a solution where you can understand all these different methodologies, and then you need to put it into a filter where you can put all the different raw data into a filter and pick up maybe Coinbase, Bitfinex, and then be able to put it into the API and output to your clients. That it's all easy and a quick way to use the data. So to your point is, the infrastructure that goes into cleaning the data is the IP. So we have inputs, we have filters, and then we have outputs. So the exchanges data comes raw into the inputs, we filter it, clean it via our methodology, and then we filter the raw data out via the API. So that's kind of how we do it. But that's just the layman's terms. Right.
And to Max's point, we do a comprehensive data as well. We do on-chain data across 10 different blockchain, every address, every token, every function call inside of the virtual machine, and extracting that. And even though it's public data, extracting that and making that available historically as well as in real time via web sockets so people can monitor what's happening is incredibly complex, incredibly high value. If you're running a DeFi project and there's hundreds of millions of dollars transacting on that project, for the liquidity providers, for the projects, for the auditors and the regulators to understand what happened when over time, that's it's complex, it's difficult, and it's high value. From a market data perspective, because we're focusing on institutional customers, we are ingesting. It is difficult to go to Max's point, is that we're supporting 20 exchanges and pulling real-time order books, real-time order book events. Every flicker of a bid or an ask, we can replay that. And if you're a liquidity provider, to be able to replay that, to retrain your model, to optimize so you can be the most profitable, is incredibly valuable, but it's incredibly difficult, and most exchanges don't provide that historical every flicker of a order book event, nor do they provide oftentimes historical order books or aggregations or reference rates, and to be able to connect to not only one venue but many venues and be able to create that reference rate to have context across each of these exchanges has a locality of reference. They may be in a different region, they may be in a different jurisdiction, they may have similar products, but nuanced things. So to be able to connect to all of that and make that available for institutions so that they can act in real time with large amounts of capital, I think it's so important. Really, it's just so important.
And one point I want to add is, so far these examples are for public data, right? But however, as we just discussed, so there's so much data, and actually most of the data out there is sensitive. It's not public, and you actually still want to be able to utilize them. So how to actually do data processing for the sensitive data so that you can actually create valuable data assets, data products that others can use and can create value from, that poses even more challenges. So again, with the Oasis Network, these are the kind of capabilities and that we provide, is to help provide the secure computing environments to enable you to do these data processing, data cleaning in the secure environments so that data's privacy can be protected while it's being processed, and then you use it to create these valuable data assets.
So it's interesting, Don, as you talk about private data, but we've seen people using ZK snarks and what have you, and we've done projects with large financial institutions and public permission, meaning permission private networks. But from a public blockchain perspective, I actually think that it's the transparency that enables trust and enable this radical transparency that's so revolutionary for digital assets and for blockchain. Because in a traditional financial market, you can look at one exchange, you can't really see order flow, you can't really understand what's happening back office or counterparty or at an exchange. You deal with your broker and your interface into their connectivity into an exchange. But with digital assets, we can actually say, hey, I want to see what's happening on that DEX. I want to see the order book on that DEX. I want to see transactions moving from that token, from that DEX to Coinbase, and from Coinbase, best bid and best offer for that token, and then watching mempool in Ethereum for that token and going out and then actually hitting people's wallets. You have radical transparency that you can see exchange flows. You can see things move between DeFi and private exchanges. You can see flows from you can monitor your counterparties' addresses to know that, oh my God, they're just liquidating everything. What's going on? Did they just get hacked? So there's better rails in the decentralized world than I think there is in any traditional finance. And today it's a smaller market, but I really think that public blockchains and DeFi is FinTech 2.0. It's where we're going, right? And I think it has to do with transparency and trust. Sure, you need privacy on some of that stuff, but the transparency is what's so transformational and so different.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so first of all, I think whether we can have both transparency and privacy protection, because sometimes for the transparency, right, you want to make sure that there's not too big systemic risk, like what happens in the housing bubble earlier. And for those, right, for those you can do privacy preserving computation while showing essentially only showing certain results to know that how big the systemic risk is, while not actually having to keep everything in the public. But I do completely agree. I think that's why this public blockchain, this DeFi is so fascinating. It's for the first time, like you said, you can actually really see everything. But also at the same time, I think it would be very interesting to also think about the risks. So for example, I was, even from a research perspective, I was actually talking, plan to talk to some of my students. Like these are new, exactly like new systems that people never had access to before. you can actually, you can see all the things and you can compute a lot of the things. So I think for the smart hackers out there, like they could compute what's, for these systems, it's likely you can find these really weak points, really critical points where maybe just by some very small leverage, you can suddenly cause the system to, either have huge collapse or have other types of behaviors that someone can actually take advantage of, right? So again, this transparency is a very interesting, I would say, two-sided sword, right? On one hand, it can really help everyone, help you know everything. But on the other hand, this transparency, this knowledge could also be utilized for someone to try to attack you and get better benefits from you. So for example, we've seen tons of attacks, either it's front running or back running. All these attacks, actually, in order to prevent them, you need to add better privacy confidentiality to actually prevent these attacks. So certainly it's a very interesting topic. I think there's a lot of trade-off. And that's why I said transparency and privacy, actually, they are not mutually exclusive, and potentially you want to design a system that actually can accommodate both and for different aspects.
So we only have a couple minutes here, but I'm really glad that conversation just broke out, because it showed like, hey, this is this new world of era where we have all this transparent data, but we also have all this private data, and people's security is really, really important. And I'm really glad that conversation just took place. But just in the last couple minutes, I would love to talk a little bit about how having high quality data, having really clean, solid data is paramount to working with Chainlink, to working with smart contracts, and getting this data through Chainlink into smart contracts. I just wanted to just briefly touch on that before we close out here.
I'll go first there. Sorry, Shawn.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the data is making the decisions. Yes, you do, make the decision to either purchase or sell, or to make a transaction. But at the end of the day, the data, especially when it comes to Chainlink, is what's going to make that contract settle. So when there's the large majority of Chainlink now is being used to settle smart contracts or derivative contracts and alike, and trading and trade settlement. Think about like a massive order that is worth a few $1 million, and it settles at an incorrect reference price. Whose fault is that? And secondly, what are the insurances there? Again, let's say you got weather data on the blockchain or in Chainlink, and and it's been built to water crops by smart devices, and the data it's got is showing that the temperature is way out of whack and it's not getting watered, then your whole harvest dies. So the data at the end of the day is fundamental, and we take it very seriously. More than building new products, we're all about building reliability, sustainability, and accuracy of the data, so people like Chainlink and others can feel confident to use our data.
Yeah, I totally agree with Max. It's all about data integrity, and that's why people like CryptoCompare and Kaiko Data and AmberData, we're investing in the infrastructure that we can provide robust data that has integrity, that people can programmatically act upon, and especially in that DeFi space, it's so critical.
Awesome. Well, that's about the time that we have. I'm sorry, Don. If you want to do a quick last thing.
I think I just want to add something really quick that we actually just announced today about the partnership between Chainlink and Oasis Network. We're really excited to bring Chainlink Oracle capability to the Oasis Network, and really excited about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this panel. This was a really fun conversation. There's so much to talk about when it comes to data, but I believe it's time for the next panel, so we'll let them jump on.
Great. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, panelists.